So there was a big stir in Washington when it was discovered that for days, the Pentagon couldn't say where Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was. It turns out he was missing because he was at the hospital being treated for an infection related to prostate surgery.
Yeah, his absence was mysterious. Some Republicans, called this out as a national security threat. Austin did later apologize and said he would do better moving forward. Let's bring in our panel for the day. We have Jamil, Jaffer, Colby Hall, and Max Burns. Jamil, let me start with you on this one. There's no way around it. This was a huge gaffe. It was a lapse in judgment by a lot of different people within his inner circle as well. But did the news yesterday of him having prostate cancer, did that change anything in your mind or the optics of this story?
I don't know how it makes it any better, to be honest with you. I actually think it makes it worse in some sense. How can you, the Secretary of Defense, have cancer, not bother to tell the president, not inform them that you're going to the hospital, and then when you go back to the ER for the surgery, and then when you go back to the ER in an emergency situation, transfer responsibilities to your deputy, don't explain to the deputy why she has those new responsibilities. Your chief of staff doesn't inform the White House, the president, the national security advisor, and all while this is going on, you have a war going on in the Middle East, you have a war going on in Ukraine. I mean, this makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and I really think that we need to look at it through a lens of, okay, he had battled cancer, he had a surgery, that I hope his health improves.
Yeah.
But you named a laundry list of things, including the fact that I believe it was his press secretary, was sick with the flu, so she didn't get out the messaging. Does nobody have somebody to fill in at these high levels of government? He's second only to the president. Max, what are your thoughts?
I think what's kind of amazing is this is a hard guy to lose. I mean, he's 6'4", 250, and nobody at DOD noticed that he just wasn't there anymore. I mean, this is clearly a national security risk. My sympathy goes out to him for his diagnosis. At least the treatment seems to be successful. But that is not an excuse to disappear at any point. And the only thing that's reassuring from this is it shows you the government is not some big conspiracy machine. Half the time, they don't even seem to know where their own people are. And that should concern us just as much.
Yeah, more than conspiracy theories. It's who's at the wheel?
Yeah, or even immediate family who was with him at the hospital. They have surely been clued in that, hey, if he's incapacitated, hypotheticals here, you got to call X, Y, and Z.
He was trying to protect, I think, his personal. I think he didn't want to appear weak.
Maybe. Colby, how do you see things? And also, what message does this send to our adversaries? Not only that so many people were left in the dark, but also there seem to be no ramifications for him. I mean, Biden's not going to accept a resignation. He's not going to fire him. How do you see it?
Well, I think the story is still being told. I sort of love Max's idea that, never chalk up to conspiracy. What you can really blame is incompetence. Clearly, there was a mistake here. I do think that you're right. Biden probably won't do anything about this. He doesn't really care one way or the other about much of this sort of stuff. He doesn't really succumb to political pressure for better and worse. I do think that we need to take a deep breath about this. I don't think it was a big conspiracy. I don't think anything really went wrong. He made a big mistake. Would I keep him as Secretary of Defense after this? Probably not. Will it be the end of our world, or will we be any less secure because he's still there? I don't think so. So it's an embarrassing stain on his tenure and the Biden administration, but I don't think it's the end of the world.
Well, when we don't know where millions or trillions of dollars went for the Defense Department, and then this happens, you're kind of like, maybe it's not a conspiracy at all, but maybe it's incompetence that's just too much. Let's talk about this next story because so many people are going to be fired up about it. More than 500 immigrant families, they were moved from temporary shelter in New York because it's cold and windy. It's winter. So temporarily, they were moved to a high school. The school then mandated students to remote learn for a day to allow those immigrants to stay at the high schools. Parents protesting. Obviously, listen, I think a lot of people have compassion for those who are homeless, those who came here with just the clothes on their back. But to say to our children who were already stressed out over the pandemic and remote learning, to say, you know what, we have a problem, but we're going to make you help us solve it. Max, I'm going to start with you. I just think this is such bad optics for the mayor and the school.
Yeah, and it's horrible for the individuals all around. I mean, the reality is they're not living at the school. They were moved there from Floyd Bennett Field because that field flooded during the rain and cold that we had. So it was physically unsafe for them to be there. And the end result is now they've been moved out at 4 a.m. back to that same floodplain. And the city is really trying to manage something that needs federal support. Programs exist right now to provide money and support for these migrants. They're just not being funded. That is a federal responsibility, and we need action from them before we start seeing deaths.
Yeah. And Jamil, the other thing I was thinking, it's not just the kids who go to this school and now they're home for the day. The parents now have to stay home or find emergency childcare. I mean, surely this can't have been the way to handle the situation during weather.
No, I think that's exactly right. Obviously, I have sympathy for these folks who are out in the field, but the problem is these folks should not be inside the United States right now at all. They should be being held at the border, being vetted for whatever they need to be vetted for. And then if they're admitted to the United States, then it's a different story. These are migrants who are seeking asylum, right? We have a serious problem at the southern border where our border is not secure, and we need to change that. And yes, federal funding needs to come in to support these issues. But when people are admitted lawfully to the United States, when they're not admitted lawfully, we need to keep them at the border. I mean, we can't continue to bear this burden. Now, we need a fundamental change to our immigration system, right? We need to let a lot more immigrants in so we can maintain our economy, but we need to do it in a lawful way, and that's the fundamental problem. The system is broken, and this is just one more example of that. We need real solutions in Washington, and those aren't forthcoming right now from the administration or Congress.
And it's about, for a lot of people, when they see stories like this, law and order. There is no order. There is no common sense. The fact is that really, Colby, this shines a light on the fact that New York City is, as Mayor Adams has said time and time again, overwhelmed and overburdened by the cost, and they just don't have any more space.
100%. You took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, and I will say that the moving of these migrants from the southern border states to New York City and Washington, D.C. and Chicago has been criticized by many on the left as using them as pawns, but it's been incredibly effective. This is not just a southern border state problem. This is a national problem. And yes, we need more funding. I mean, I know Floyd Benfield very well. I take my kids, that's where I teach them to drive because there's these big runways. And the weather last night was horrible. I canceled a basketball game last night with my kid because of wind and rain. I tell you who's not upset by this story, and that's the students at James Madison High School who got a free day of not going to school. Their parents are probably, I know that they're very, very upset, and for a good reason. But we need to fix this. We need to fix this now. And the Biden administration has so far punted, and that's bad for it.
Yeah, it's beyond a crisis at this point. I know you were talking to someone at the southern border last week who said this is now a catastrophe. Let's move on to the last topic of the day. California lawmakers are considering banning tackle football for kids under the age of 12, citing studies that show the sport can lead to brain damage and also CTE. Colby, I'm going to punt it back to you on this one to start it off. My producers say that you have an interesting take on this one. You're opinionated on it. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, you're speaking to a champion-level flag football coach, so I think flag football is a great solution till 10. You know, I think it's a parent's decision if they want to play tackle under 12. I don't really think that these kids are big enough and strong enough to really suffer CTE. But this is a trend that's been happening for some time. And I think slowly but surely we're going to see the only real pro football players are largely going to come from southern states and maybe Ohio and Pennsylvania that continue to do this. This is a trend that's been happening for a long time. And of course, it's California. I don't really think it's going to happen, but less and less kids are playing tackle football and opting for less, dangerous stuff. So flag football is great fun. Kids should play flag football.
Flag football is very fun. And I think all of us played it in high school, especially because they didn't want to have us ladies get tackled by any big boys in our class. But Max, I'm asking you about Assemblymember Kevin McCarty. He actually presented this bill because there were studies shown that over 150 athletes, they died under age 30, and they had signs of CTE. So people are, this is a preventative bill. Is this an infringement on anybody's liberty? Should parents have the right to choose at what risk their children are when they're playing games?
Well, I think Colby has a point that this does come down to a parental choice, but the data is concerning at the least. Last year, we saw Boston University scanned 376 brains of deceased football players. They found that 91% of them had some kind of CTE. That's even with the millions of dollars the NFL spends on safety. And the NFL has admitted that football does contribute to this. Whether that's a serious problem at that young level is unclear. But the question for parents is, do you take that risk?
Yeah. I know the CEO of the Concussion Legacy Foundation just spoke out about this, saying, I don't have a problem with NFL players who are adults, who understand the risk and are compensated. Basically going on to say doing it for fun was a different story. But Jamil, when I read that, I thought to myself, yeah, but all of those NFL players started in, as little leaguers playing tackle football. Young. It has to start young to get to a professional level.
No, that's exactly right. And Southern California does have a lot of top high schools that send folks to the NFL and to the college sports. So it's going to be a real problem if they put this in place. At the end of the day, parents have got to make these decisions. I think Colby's exactly right. By the way, I didn't even realize, I'm a 14-year-old, didn't even realize that you could play tackle football that young. I just assumed it was flag football. So learned something new myself.
Taking you to school, Jamil, today.
I can see this happening in California. I don't know that it will happen in some the southern states, as you mentioned, and other states around the nation. Thank you so much, Jamil, Colby, Max. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, see you soon. Class action lawsuits are hitting the real estate industry, and it all stems from claims of inflated fees for realtors. We're about to break down the accusations and how the lawsuits could change the industry.
Let's get a quick check on weather for you right now. A powerful storm system has caused some widespread damaging winds over the past 24 hours in the southeast. More than a dozen tornadoes reported in Florida and Georgia. Flood alerts ongoing for the East Coast. Expect some improvements, though. Today, the sun is coming out. However, another major storm system is developing out west. You'll want to watch for that. Heavy snow expected for the Rockies before this moves into the plains and Great Lakes, bringing more snow by Friday. Farther south, we're tracking the potential for another severe weather outbreak along the Gulf Coast and southeast U.S. heading into the weekend.
Right now, get a free footlong at Subway, like the new Deli Heroes.